But I'd really like to know what's with these two people. And if they don't come to the show, then tomorrow they have to come and see me.
I think Shimon Shacknowitz said he wasn't feeling well. I asked him if he was coming. That's just what he told me. Today is the evening of Chaf Zayin, the Adar, Tashin Samech Tes, and this is a share in Samech Tes on Amid Chaf Hey.
Right, so we're holding at the end of Amid Chaf Hey, and we saw the union of Shema Toya was the union of the Yichud, well, not so much the Toya, the Etzem Kli HaChochma, that it was Muchan Lekabel Harbe Chochma. And we saw that the Invazer is that the Choyma and the Tzura, that's to say the Etzem Inyan of the Etzem Matzias of the Kli and the Oyer become Be'eref Bedugma Zeh Lazeh, even though Be'etzem the emes is that there are Choikim Zemizeh, or they become close in a way that they unite together Be'yichud Amiti. And we saw that that was the Indian brought in the famous Maim of Tov Reish Samach Beis in Parsha Bahar, where he talks over there about the Indian from Ruchnias Shebegashmias, but that's Miskashe in the Gashmi Sheberuchnias. In other words, that in the Kli, you have Atzlacha, you couldn't loch, no. So we'll have to leave it up tonight. But, hopefully people just think it's locked. And we saw that the Ruchnias Shebegashmias, well, that's in the proof when I get to the nefesh. We saw that there's these adim, these very fine vapors of moisture and warmth in the Avery Haguf. What that aid, dark as it's called, or that forms a kesher, and this mishachid with the gashmir sheberuchnias, hainu a yerida v'hamshocha on the part of the nefesh, into a more Gushim Dike level where it's able to be Meshachid with the Ruch Nishabegashmias. And that causes a yichud and a ishtalvus between those two inyonim, what that leads to the etzem islavshas of the nefesh be haguf. And so we saw that Lamaila, that's what we're trying to describe, that in the Kalim there's also as it were oil sheba kli, and that's mishach with the kli sheba oil, and that's what we find in many places in Siddur. It's brought down that his havus akli, the coming about of the kli, is from what we call is avus mit ayin is avus ha'oil. In other words, that there's a certain what you might call thickness in the oil itself, but that leads to the matzias of the keli, or that's actually part of the union of the coming into being of the keli. But in this particular union, the savas are oil, or that what leads to the ability of the kli, and that's the union of gashmi shabaruchnias, and that union of the. So what are you going to do? That union of the Gashmi Shabaruchnias, or that's Kaviohu, the thickness of the Kaviohu of the oil. And that thickness of the oil, that's a bigger richness thing. So there was ein kana mochim to be married in it too much. Well, that's due to the B'shas HaTzimtzum. And these colors at the Rishimo, as it's called, after the Tzimtzum, well, that's the Mochi of the Kelim, then it's Korol in the Rishimo, the Inyan HaOyer, over the way that oil is Nimshach, Alidei, the Rishimo, then it becomes literally nikne or purchased in the oil, a certain aspect of the Kli. Therefore, it's got in itself a certain thickness, like we see when you take pure water, but you boil it or you expose it to heat. So, okay, stop passing things around, because everybody's eyes are going back and forth with all this passing around. Nobody's listening the heck to what we're learning. That Indian at a thickness in the oil, when we expose water to heat, then we notice that there's like a very delicate sort of dust, or afuri as it's called in Russian Kurdish, occurs in the water. Even the purest water gives a sort of a type of small little particles that come due to the exposure to heat. And so that's called the Indian of the Gashmir Shabaruchnis. That's the Indian of his avus ha'oyer, or that's his colorless of the koyach hakli shabatoich ha'oyer. But when I say his colorless, a sort of kinyanas are in the, so the two join together, and that leads to the slabshus of the nefesh in the guf, or lamaila, the slabshus of the earth in the kelim. Indian aruchni shabagashmiyas. Hainu hachonis hakli, ma shehi kli muchana umusugolo lekabel esoyer. Or that Indian ruchni shebagashmiyas, or as we see l'mayla in the Indian of the kelim, the shebakli, or that's the Indian of the bitul hakli, hachonis hakli, ma shehi kli muchana umusugola. Just like we see in the Ava, or that the duck, which is found in the Ava and the goof, or they have the ability to, musugal means that they're worthy or they're ready for that type of thing, that they're able to be makabel, the oil of the nefesh, well, upon him the gashmis, the oil of nefesh, in a similar way, lamaila, or that beetle and that preparation of itself, as it were, in the kli, or that makes it masugul to be makabel the oil, and that makes it shebazeh he misachedes im ha'oil. What we see that in pnimis ha'inians, we're going to learn here, they can mamish unite together and they become like one Indian in the pnimis ha'choponim of the keli. V'zehu shem hatoya. Where does that yichud occurs between the oil and the kli? Mamish po even kozer, they become be'erech zelazeh, and they become bedimian one to the other. Well, that's what we call the descriptive name, the shem hatoya. Yes, matayer es hakli. Yeah, well, that shem is matayer the kli. And what does it mean? It's matayer the kli. It tells us that that kli is muchana b'toiv lekabel. That kli is well ready to be mekabel, lahaskil kol dvar seichel, shetiv hachanosa, but that high standard or that high goodness of her preparation, zeo mahus va'atzmusa akli.
Where are all the other bachman?
Huh?
All the other bachman.
Ask the other bachman.
Huh?
Für mein Schier ist keine nicht da.
Huh?
Für mein Schier ist keine nicht da.
Es kann sein, dass mal gelernt habe, Gesellschaft, aber es wird bald als Bottle mit Tosse, Bottle Cola. Als Bottle, ein bisschen von der Seite, das Bottle die ganze. I must admit that I'm really sorry about it, but I really, I only spoke with my guys, so I really don't. We should have made it clear that we wanted everybody here for Seder. I certainly get out to them. The only thing is that maybe some of them are still reading.
Could be.
Some of them are still reading.
Possibly.
Huh?
Possibly.
So maybe call up one or two of them and see where they are, and maybe you might get some to come. Where did you guys eat?
In the dorms.
Huh?
In the dorms.
I ate in the dorms. Other than that, after we can clap the telephone.
You said it. Sorry about this.
שטיב החנוסה זהו מהוס ועצמוס הכלי. Now here's like the key svara to the whole inyan that we're describing here. What is the inyan of a kli? I mean, if we take the word kli in the simple muvan, what is a taicha kli? The whole idea of a kli is a kli lekabel mashahu. And the more the inyan is ready, and the more it's able to take into itself inyonim al tzad hatoiv, and to what you might call not only preserve the mila of those inyanim, but even to add to it slightly, or to, like, there's an old saying that if you pour, good wine into a plastic cup or something, it loses its whole time. But if you put it into a crystal glass or something, it's got to come around under a time. In other words, I remember once I was on guard duty and I was asked to bring the officer of the whole unit a cup of coffee. He was in the middle of his work and he needed a cup of coffee. So I went into the canteen and I bought what all the soldiers, they drank from these plastic cups, So I just got him a cup of coffee in a plastic cup. I took it in and on a plate with a little biscuit or something. I put it on his table. He looks up and he said, he smelled it. That's what you bring me? I thought, that's good coffee, I put some sugar in it, all good to that. And he said, I don't drink in a plastic cup. He said, the whole coffee loses its time. He said, I only drink in a glass cup. He said, you have to go into the kitchen, tell it's from me, and tell me I want a glass cup. I remember it very vividly. I was standing there. Thought I'd done my little task. I'll tell you, yes, I tell you, do I get such a cup, In other words, when you put a certain material in a kli which is mukhan lazeh, then it not only preserves it, but it's even, that's what we'll see later, that's another inyan, that not just the kli is mekabel, but the kli has a certain ability to in some way answer to the thing in which it's put. Anyway, for the time being, what is the whole question or whole musag of a kli lekabel? And the more it's able to be mekabel and the more capably it's mekabel, then the more it's a kli. And so therefore, that Indian from tiv hachanoso, that ability to be mekabel, zeo mahus ve'atzmus hakli, or it depends on the quality of its preparedness to be mekabel, or that's the very essence of a kli. More ability to be mekabel, more essence of a kli. Less ability, less mahus in the kli. That the whole Indian of a kli is its preparation within itself, and we call that in other places considered the beetle, and the giving away of its own status to be a kibul, to be a receptacle. Well, that's the mahusa etzem of the kli. When we say Shem Hatoya, we mean that this kli is so ready and so well prepared and so bottled to the earth that they become together in such a way that they are almost inyan echad, and that's a pshat misachadim, Loshen achtas. They become misachadim zeb nebazeh. Okay, now that's one inyan that we see now in the pshat kli ela, and those are the pshat Shem HaToya. In other words, that the Shem is referring to the Keli, and it's referring to the Bittel and the Yechoilis HaAchona on the part of the Kli, to be a Kli LeKabbalah, v'lo yoter. Kol inyan is only LeKabel. V'gam, now that's a new inyan, Gam is a new pshat. V'gam nikro Shem HaToya, al Shem sha'akli mita'eres es ha'oyer. Another reason, now I realize it's not here, what's his name? The Australian fellow. Not you. I guess he's got bats in his belfry about the test tomorrow. Anyway, I believe that the mountain is coming to the valley instead of the valley going to the mountain. That's what I hear. He's coming here. He's coming here into Krachabat. וגם נקרא שם הטויה על שם שהכלי מתארס את האויר. A further reason now, and a new inyan niflo that we're going to see barichas, another reason why it's called Shem HaToya is not so much what the kli is be'etzem minyonai, but what the kli does for the oil. This is already a new inyan now, back the other way, not how the oil is able to enter the kli and be misachid with it, but a certain ability in the part of the kli to do something to the oil. And that's why it's called Shem HaToya, that it literally describes and in some way indicates to me the quality of the oil. And that's the Teich Mita'eres es ha'oyer, but not stam, but it's going to be Mata'er the oyer and ha'oyer pnimi va'atzmi. Now, how can a kli be Mata'er the oyer? The whole unit of a kli is lakabil. Yes, so what's the pshat that the kli is Mata'er? It describes the light. Because up to now the pshat has been that we're describing the kli and its ability to unite with the oyer. And here we're saying that there's a new meaning al yedei that ichud with the kli, as it were, does something for the oyer, and that's called tiur. It's mitayeres as oyer. Va'inenu tehine atzmus umahus hakli shehi kli lekabbalah. Like we just pointed out, that's the very essence of what a kli is. It's not only atzmusa, it's also not only mahusa, it's also atzmusa. That's the very Indian of a kli. Mikol mokim ein atzmus ha'oyer mislavish bakli. Akma sha'kli toifeses es ha'oyer. Even though the whole Indian of a kli is only lekabil oyer, he said al tzada yesa teiv, in the best way we can imagine the yichud of the oyer with the kli. He said, not the very essence of the oyer is able to be mislabesh, yet to enter into the lavush of the kli. Rak masha kli toifeses es oyer. How much a kli, being as it is, a matzias, and the oyer is a inif and hepech a matzias, oyer is givui hamoyer, is how much is it possible for a kli to be makabel only, as you might say, to a large percentage, but not completely. It can't mamish be makabel, but toichoi be slabshus. What is slabshus means, that it mamish becomes a lavush miyuchad to the oyer, that the oyer enters and is affected by the kli. That's what we call the slabshus. Or that can only be what a thing which is a matzias, almost rochik mea oyer betachlis, or that can be teifes in the oyer. Only that much can really occur in the mile of the kli, what is a kli lekabel. V'lochein nikr shem hatoya v'loi shem ha'etzem. He said therefore it's called only shem hatoya and not shem ha'etzem, because the etzem of the oyer is not mislavish and mishachid with the kli. And therefore, where a kli is coming into being, and we're calling names of Shem Kalim, the highest name we can give is Shem HaToyah. That indicates a closeness of the kli to the oyer. Although that tends to indicate to me that the Indian of Shem HaEtzem, the name that we call Shem HaEtzem, has got nothing really to do with the kli. No, the Indian and Shem HaEtzem is in the very essence of the oyer, and not just stam in Giluim of the oyer, because Giluim of the oyer have already been nitfus in a kli toiv, a kli which is mamish mukhan, a chocham b'shem ha'toyer is a nemus a chocham. And we saw the great description of him before. And if we have to say that when we shem ha'etzem, if it's al shem ha'oyer and not al shem ha'kli, then we have to say that's in etzem oyer, that the shem ha'etzem is referring to the etzem ha'oyer, which will mean that if we're going to say a chocham b'shem ha'etzem, then that means that he's able to be masig the oyer kilu b'li kli, and therefore he's called a chocham b'shem ha'etzem, which is even higher than all the miles we saw in chocham b'shem ha'toyah. Tehine shem ha'etzem hu ma shenikra chocham al shem oyer chochmosei be'etzem. This is a very fascinating point, not often made in Siddhas. Usually we say that Shem HaEtzem is the name of the person that he's called by, like Avraham or Yosef or Yitzchak or Shnir, all these names. They're called the Shem HaEtzem of a mention. They're a Nevuah which came Umayla and v'chule. That's called the Shem HaEtzem, because that's Nagea to the Etzem Adam, when we see when he's called by his name, he's Poina B'Kol Atzmusei. And it's neged to the etzem amshachas hachayis b'techakul. However, here says the Rebbe that it's possible for there to be a shem ha'etzem on a word which is shad to the koiches. In other words, a person can be called chacham al shem ha'etzem, or meaning be shem ha'etzem. So he says he's nikra chacham al shem uir chachmosei, uir, not the kli, chachmosei be'etzem. והוא שאויר השכל שלו בעצם הוא בהמשוך הטויבו ובכוחו להשכיל ולשכחם בכל דבר חוכמה ושכל מצד עצם אור השכל שלו. In other words, the oil without the kli. The masha kli moichei muchanim betuv v'hem kelim lekabel ari mikol mokim hari hem teifsim bo'er alidei kli. They are teifis the oil, hari hu rather teifis bo'er alidei kli. Leibo etzem mamish, like we just said. Ki im masha kli teifis ha. That's not the whole etzem oil. V'lochein tzodik yugiyah v'hamokeh. Yeah, beklei moichoi v'az davki yashkil v'yishchachim. Yeah, and therefore he needs a lot of effort and hard work and profundity of usage of the mind with the kelim of his moyach. V'oz davki yashkil v'yishchachim. Only when he works with the kli, and what you might call, he elevates the kli, and he betters it and makes it more edel, or as we saw, he makes it more into a kli lekabel. He makes it more and more botel, that it should be a oil, lekabel. And if we saw the liyesh sibus askola, he mitzadak kli shetoifeses ha'oil. We're talking about a chochem that he needs in a kli. Shrichim yagir lahalish klei sikloi oil lezachochom ukahai gavna ad shetekabo es ha'oil. He said, therefore, since up to now we've been talking only about chachomim harayah mitzad the kli, therefore you need a lot of yagir and effort and struggle to literally elevate your keli, klei sikloi, oil lezachochom, or to make them, how do you call it, more purified, more edel, ukahai gavna, and similar to that, ad shetak tekabel esa oil, until they'll be able to be makabel more oil and better oil, being the implication. Avol chochem be'etem hu shemaskil u'mischachim mitzad etzem oil chochmosei shebechol inyan nimshech etzloi navio rabo, a tremendous bursting, how do you call it, a tremendous flow. But a navia means like something that bubbles up from under the ground, that it's all the time occurring to him new flows of in a great way. A navia rabba, a tremendous bursting or flowing me'oid. I'm sorry, me'oir haseichel. Navia rabba me'oir haseichel shaloi b'sikli yoisamukais. Believe very profound concepts. Believe shum yagia. He said it just happens on its own. V'ashikliim heim bo'evan acher legamrei. Heim b'pchinas oimek upnimis ha'inyan yoiser. U b'pchinas hafshota. They are in a form of abstractity. So here the reason I read down to that point is that we have to l'chera be mizbeinan. Whether it takes oir seichel, whether it takes kli seichel, klei sikloi, and oir seichel. What is the chilik? L'chera, always we say that a kli is a matzias. Yeah, a kli is a dovish of matzias, and a oir is a inim poshut. Yeah, l'gabi the kli. So how can we say that there's a kli of seichel, and there's also an oir of seichel? And if you got, and so then you might say the other way around, I mean you might ask what's called a klotzkasha, that if you can have oyer seichel, and you can have seichel mitzad etzem ha'oyer, what he did a kli for was, we used to have mention of kelim, when they could just have oyer seichel, they could have a beef and nifla, or how do you call it, navia, rabbo, mit der ganze Indian, beli yachasela, ela kli, kilu, he doesn't even need the kli, he just gets it mitzad etzem ha'oyer seichel. So also the shago, what's the difference between oil and kli? What is the chilik zwischen say? That's seichel, and that seems to be seichel. And we should enough kimina peineicher. So we have to say that the ikar, even though the oil is poshet legabi the kli, we have to say in a way that the ikar in every oil, with every kli, the ikar sof is the oil. And the kli is only a inyan from kli leka. The Kabbalah, that the man should be a makabel, or the nefesh, the koiches nefesh should be a makabel from the oil. And every oil has got in itself a maila and a pshitas of a sof. It's in a way the ikar. So ask yourself, the shaila, was it the inyan of the oil, was it the inyan from the kli? And if we're going to say that the oil is partial, then how do we call it the ikar inyan ha-seichel? Seichel is l'chora details, it's not pshita. So we have to say, b'yizboninus amuka b'dora, we have to say that the inyan from oil, how it comes from the inyan from seichel, and it comes from the koiches ha'yulium, through the koiches ha'yulium, atzmium, into the koich, what do you call shocha ne'alemas, then it comes into the inyan from the koich ha'yuli, a golo yoter, what that's a koich ha'maskil. We have to say that ain't no chanami, does a inyan from seichel, but it's not seichel in the normal way that we understand seichel. We understand seichel. That's what he means by the word hafshota. And the embassy inyan of oil seichel, how it comes begolui, from the koiches how they klulim in the etzem hanefesh. That's what he means here. We're talking about the etzem oil seichel, and we're talking about the highest gilu of seichel, how it can come to him from the koich hamaskil. We have to say that that's what's called the inyan from hasogas hashlila. That's an inyan of gilu inyanim by way of abstractity. And what they be'ika tell us is what the thing is not. They keep telling us higher and higher. They don't talk about chokhmah directly. They don't tell you what it. They tell you how it's not that and it's not that, and how it's mufla umarumam, and oimek amiyim ta'ena with el inyonim. In other words, that the emesa oyer tells you about what the zach is really kol in Elakus, and in its mock in an even from Avshota Klapi Maila. That's what we call Asogas Hashlila. And ever he said that a Chacham, who is a Chacham mitzad etzem ha'oyer, not mitzad the Kli, he's a man where it just goes by him to Zelcha Navias, rabbis, and that he can just start talking about that. Yeah, he doesn't know where it's all going to finish, as you might say. It just keeps going. Because that's the etzem over the way those siklim come over. Other people can't really figure. It's very difficult for what you might call the so-called chacham koton, or the so-called simple man, to really understand what the heck he's talking about. He doesn't really gain any real shefa from that, because it's all talking about inyonim in a oifen of abstractity. It's really talking about what the inyonim are not, more of what they are. In other words, it's describing how they're mufshotim or muvdolim klape de etzem. And that goes with a ribi navia, keep going higher and higher in the aliyah klapi maila. And the Botan and the Kisvi Arizal, the Rabbeinu Chaim Vital, the Talmidim, they asked the Arizal, why was it that he didn't write things down? Why didn't he write a sefer? Why didn't he write everything down? This the Chazamin, unbelievable Gilui, Chochmas Pnimis HaTorah. Why didn't he write it down? So he answered that once he begins in a certain inyan, then the Naviya, that was the expression he used with the word here, the Naviya is so immense that he can't keep up with it. It just runs away from him, and there's no way he can sort of tie it down into writing, because that's in an Akbola in Kli, it just runs away from all Hamshocha B'Kli. That's it, Kakawama. Imagine as Amen, and that was in how do you call it, in Pnimis HaTorah, or in Nigla HaTorah. Also, Sumina, they say about the Rogachover Gohan, that when he started talking, he just would shoot all sorts of iron there, iron po, iron sham, and that was and there, and there, Yerushalayim, they would all just go, and people just wouldn't really be able to keep up with him, they wouldn't really be able to figure. And if you learn some of the Ksovim of the Rogachover, you've got to have tremendous experience, and give up a lot of time just to getting used to his way of telling you things, because otherwise when you just look at it first glance, it's very hard to follow what it's all about. Because there's just a lot of brief iron charms and this is something else, and then there's a big series of Marai Makimas, this Yerushalmi and this Tesis and that. It's very, very difficult to, and as I told you the famous story that he once came into a shul and there was a whole group of talking from Tom Chetumim. They knew that he was a really great man, the Rosh Hashanah, they really were admirers of his. And so it was Shalom this time, and the Gabbai called out that he should say, he was going to say some Torah at the table, so all the Bochim all crowd around. They want to hear what's what the Rosh Hashanah was on. So they started to stuff a little bit, the Balabatim, they shouldn't get in their way. So the Gabbai called out, he said, don't push around here. He said, there's Rebbe. There's no Rebbe around here. He said, don't have to push, to stuff. So the Rosh Hashanah looked at him and gave him a sort of a humorous look. And he said, Los say stuffen. He said, let him push. He said, because was ich can sagen is by say Nista Balawachi. He said, what I'm going to say is Nista Lagavidem. In other words, that Nista is a word for Pnimis, for Kabbalah. So he said, why do they push Torah? Because the Rebbe says Kabbalah, he says Pnimis. So what I'm going to say Lagavidem is Nista. It's a play on words, right? Very amazing joke. In other words, they're not going to be able to know what I'm saying anyway, so let them stop. I said, the Rosh Hashanah. So he knew before he started the people. Because once he started it's a flow. You follow? So that's in England, das ist in Pnimiyat. But there was once a whole mass that the Rebbe Rashab met the Rosh Hashanah to get him with the afraid to get up. Besof Yomov and no joke. That's a whole Inyam what he said, the Rosh Hashanah, what he said about his way of learning. Oh, amazing Inyam, and they can't do it. But in the end, they mentioned a certain Indian, and the Rebbe Rashab told him that Indian how it is in Pnimis and in Avedis Hashem. And the Rebbe Rashab spoke quite a long time, and this, it was also just pouring for pure. So the Rebbe Rashab, when he heard that, he said that, das kann nicht. He said he's not able to do it that way. He can do it with Derech HaNiglo, but he's not able to do it. There's a whole Indian why he didn't study Chassidus. There's a whole. He once said that if he were to study Chassidus, that it would take him about two and a half weeks to study all the Sfarim that there are in Chassidus. As at least the printed ones were at that time. And he said, what can he do? He doesn't have the time. He doesn't have that amount of time. He's too busy with all the commitments that he's got. Yeah. Anyway, as we'll go further. So that's the Eden of a Navi Rab. Oh, so what do we see from that? We see that somebody who's a Chacham, Be'etzem Koyach Chachmasai, doesn't mean the Kli, no, that means the Etzem Ha'oyer. And therefore it's in a Oifen for Shlila. It's not in an Indian for positivity, where a certain Indian is Nimshach, and you get it clear, and it comes down, and it's all limited, and you see clearly how it doesn't refer to something else, etc., and how it does relate to something else, how it doesn't to another Indian, but it's going up in an Oifen of abstractity and away from the normal limitations and rules of play in understanding, as you might say. Adar, that's the inyan van oyer. Dat is die emse inyan van oyer, because oyer is inyan van pshitas always. I had to get oyer seichel. So oyer seichel, amiti, is in a even that it's oyer, but it's, I'm sorry, I had seichel, but it's not seichel. It's seichel, but it's the inyan van aliyah, hafshot klapeya emes, which is mudo, from the ordinary here, and only known in the Oimek Asod to that particular Chacham that he's giving forth over those in Yonim the far. That's what the Rosh Hashanah said, that even in Nigla, he's in the Sod. Now, what he's going to say to cover these guys anyway, it's in Yonim, Aliyah B'derech Sod. The same with the Inim from the Arizah, so Inim from Aliyah, in Sod Ufer, and that's the Inim from Rosen de Rosen. So that's the Indian of a Chacham mitzat etzem oyer sichloi. And that's what we find the Lashon. Instead of a Chacham be'etzem koyach chachmasa. That's the Pshat. Mashenkin stam a Chacham, no, say stam. I feel a Chacham amiti, then he is mitzat a Kli. Now, was it attached to Kli? The Kli is an Indian which is able not so much to actually be mamtzi the etzem noise of the Seichel, but its Indian is to limit it and to show the derech, and in some way to bring it into a solche hagbolas and ways of expression which are matim to the madreg of that person and the people around him, so that he'll be able to be mishachet with it in a way that it becomes relatable to him. A chochem doesn't need that. And the Father said about certain great chachomim, the Torahs, that when they were asked, why don't you come down and tell it to us, or they would say to him a certain musik, that he would say, yeah, he already knows that, and this is by them some tremendous chiddush, and they would tell it to this particular person, he would say, yeah, that's what he's moving, ain't tzorich loimer. So what does it say, ain't tzorich loimer? It's not necessary, because the so-called normal understander, he needs to bring it down into limitations and into ways of separating it from something else and being magbil the Indian. And that's the Indian from Asogas HaKli. Asogas HaKli is an Indian of being magbil the thing. A person like that, he doesn't need to be magbil anything, it just flees around, and if there's any connections with her, they just move on in Metecha HaNaviyah. En daarvan komt dat die emmerse Indian of de Seichel is die Ur. Ja, dat is die mythische Indian van de Seichel, but the Indian van de clay is that he pulls it more into a world of what you might call positivity and relationship in a direct way, that the mentions of will say, oh, he got that and he got that, and now he can relate the two in him together. A chochem betzim doesn't need that. And it's very difficult for us to understand. He's our mensch, how he really functions, and his whole Indian is like, hafshota klape Mila. And that's the mythisch Indian van Ur, because Ur always is back towards its mocker, kiyadua. And Mamila, in Iron Basin, the second Kili, there's a whole beer over there. When I get to a chachal mamiti, and it goes even further than that, I bet over there he just doesn't need any raya siklias or even any burim, he just gets right away in Minamoisa. It's completely, that he call it unnecessary for him to tell him a beer and something, because he already knows that. Just, he doesn't need the beer because he's got the etzemas color. Better million of beer.
So when Chassidus became more popular, and when they started, and people started distributing it more often, like when the Alter Rebbe wrote the Tanya, does that mean that people's kelim changed to be Mekabel Chassidus?
That's a good question. Did the people's kelim change? Yes. You see, that's a very good question, because the Alter Rebbe, so I'd have to be married, Barichas Gedela, to answer that question. But suffice it to say, the tremendous chiddush of the Alter Rebbe is that he wrote Sefer Shel Beinonim. And everything that's written in the Tanya is for Beinonim. It's for mention who are what you call average people. Even though you might say, well, the real Beini is a little bit more than average. But he's an average person who really made it. You understand? He's an average person that he fights hard. And he's got all the nishenas of the average person, just that he keeps them at bay, but he's got them. I mean, to write a book of that nature, with all the unbelievable wisdom and hafshata that there is in the Tanya, well, that's the most unbelievable achievement that could possibly be. And the fact that the whole Indian of the Tanya is dafki for Sefer Shel Beinonim. You must remember always that the Alter Rebbe is not talking to tzaddikim, he's talking bika to Beinonim. And if he tells you about tzaddikim, it's only in order that you should be able to understand something better about the Beinonim. But the Sefer is not about the tzaddikim, it's about the Beinonim. Sefer Shel, it's a book which belongs to the Beinonim. Sefer Shel Beinonim. It's a piddly place. That is the most unbelievable greatness in Chochmah. He can go into this unbelievable world, and yet nonetheless, bring it down into the Kelim. And the more you learn Tanya, the more your Keli becomes a Kli, because the effect of a Sefer like Tanya is that it works away at the Kli. How do you call it? It hydrochloric acid the Kli every now and then and shapes it out and makes it more of a Kli l'Kabbalah. In the Chanami. The whole Indian from Tanya is like two ketzoves. And that's that unbelievable Indian of Aliyah, nonetheless coming into the Kli of the Poshta Mensch.
the Samech Tes is saying that the Kli of Chachma. How can you have a Kli Chachma which doesn't get from the Or Chachma?
Oh, yes, it does. Oh, yes, it does. But that's what we're saying. It gets from the Or Chachma, but it only gets it the way a Kli is tefes in that. You understand?
Yeah.
It comes down to oil, and then the Kli is tofes, so the Kli brings it down and makes it relatable to other inyonim and limits it and puts it into certain boundaries, and that's what we call the Sogas Achiyu. You follow? That's called the Sogas Achiyu. And then you can relate it to other inyonim, and you can, because what you're doing is the Kli is being tofes. What does tefisa mean? That you're holding it in, you're not letting it express itself fully. And that's the type hasaga. Hasaga means that you caught up with it and you hold it for yourself. And that's the in a high madrega, that's the in of Shema Toya. But it's still the Kli, and even though that person is a very elevated chacham, he can't take all the Ur. He can only take a certain, percentage of it, kamashuhu tofes. The ilu, the in of Shema Etzem, that's the Etzem Oer B'li Kli. And that's why you see he doesn't need the Kli. Ain't no in a Kli. Amamira asks us the shaila. I mean, the push the reader with that. He comes up with the basic shaila. And the said, "What do we need a kli for? Just make everybody melachat that they're etzem chachamim, be'etzem koyach chachmasam, be'etzem oir, yeah, from the nefesh. But the oir b'kol echad is b'shleimas. Mitzad etzem, sure everybody's got the same basic capacities. Yeah, Mosai. Yeah, Yagiu Majel, Maza Alveza, Avrom Yitzchak, Viyanki. It comes to us that everybody's got basically the same meaning. Why didn't they have to make it? Everybody's got Koya Betchum, Koya Chokmasa. Everybody said all the air. What do you need the whole Kli for? Well, it was not on the Kli, and then you say, oh yes, but the Kli can't really grasp everything and do it. It makes everybody just have oil. What is that on the Kli? Why do you need to have people that are only Shema Toya? Make everybody Shema Etzem. No, was it the Teretz? The Teretz says that we don't really know, but we do. What are the times? Because if the Eibishter did that, then there would be no Aveda. It would all be, how do you call it, Nahamadiki Sufra. Right from the beginning, you would be born in such a way that you were just a kocham, be'etzem koch, chachmaschach. And like we're going to see Shlomo HaMelech right in the next line. We're going to have a whole dogma. If somebody who's a kocham, be'etzem koch, chachmaschach, a dogma for him is Shlomo HaMelech. And Shlomo HaMelech got a mil, Ma'ila v'Hashem noson chochma le'Shlomo. This is a gift. This is a matona mil, Ma'ila. The Eibishter doesn't want it that way. The Eibishter doesn't want we should have things in the form of a gift. The Eibishter wants that everything has to be worked out by the Father said, say to them, to Kli, and there has to be an image in the Kli, and you have to take it into yourself and be united with yourself. And gradually, you idle out the Kli, and then you work upwards, and eventually, if you really are Amasa Chacham, and you really want to be Amasa Chacham, and you really work very hard, then you come to that in Etzem Koyach Mosai. That's just a brief touch on the Teretz of Yeshler. He said he doesn't like it that way. He said he wants everybody should be a Chacham Betzim Koyach Chachmasam. What is it? We have to show you we want Moshiach. Now even stronger. Mashiach had come. It's like what we have now will all be Chacham Betzim Koyach Chachmasam. Then there'll be a tremendous series of aliyahs the whole time, then you'll be sweating away to keep up with all the aliyahs. Auch upon him does it in a kuda. Mami, come to Isla Fis there, that is good of Sapir Dikazar. Chamoi Chachma Shleimoi, Shanim Shakloi Shefa, Mi Chachma El Yoina, Bechol Dva Chachma U Madar. Oh, first of all, he said the word Avshota. Well, that's a very beautiful, the beer we just gave. And then he said, like Shloimoi, V'hainu mishum da havaya nosen chochmale Shloimoi. It's the first pasuk in the Haftarah from Parsha Truma. It's in the passage over there in Sefer Malachim, where it's written, V'Hashem nosen chochmale Shloimoi. And so what does Shloimoi do? He used that chochma, what the Eibishter gave him to build the Beis HaMikdash. אבל אוכל פונים, שניתן לו חוכמה עליונה, ואין זה כמו שכתוב, and he said, this is not like, Shlomo was given Chochmah Milmaila. He said, this is not like what is written, Kanei Chochmah Ubechol Kinyonecha Chulu. There's a pasuk in Mishlei where it's written, Reish is Chochmah. That's interesting. Reish is Chochmah. Kanei Chochmah Ubechol Kinyonecha Knoi Bina. I state that. You should raise his chokhmah. You should be makabel the meaning chokhmah, and then all of your kinyonecha, all your kinyonim, you should purchase literally a bina. So what is the meaning for a kinyon? The meaning for a kinyon is that you are a buyer and you buy something which is not you. It's above you or outside you, and you give a certain price and you take it. So therefore that adds up very nicely what we were discussing the other day. But again to the Iyim from Chochmah, what we saw in Rashi over there, in Parsha Kisisa, Rashi says that Chochmah is what you makabel from a tweiter. Those are the emes Iyim from Chochmah. That's the Iyim for the bittul, the kli legabi the mashpia. And that's what's written over there. Knei, the reish is Chochmah, knei Chochmah. Reish is Chochmah, knei Chochmah. The beginning of all Chochmah is for you to know that you've got to buy Chochmah. You've got to get it from, Rashi writes over there in the pasuk in Mishlei. Rashi says, Masha Mekabu mi Rabbi. What's that Mekabu for Zayin Rav? And then there's an Inen of a Kol Kinyonecha Knoi Bina. So the Matsuda storylines over there, that afterwards you got your whole, and Rashi also says, Masha Me'ein there, that afterwards you busy yourself with your own pilpul, what you got from the Rav, your own effort, your own struggle. Well, that's Bina. That's Knei Bina. And that's like a shleimus in the mention, but that's already even from Kelim Mamish. Bina's Mamish even from Kelim. Even Chochmah is the beginning of Kelim Al-Choponim. But Al-Choponim we see that there has to be in what you might call the normal function of Seichel, there has to be Knei Chochmah. You have to purchase Chochmah, Ubechol Kinyonecha Knoi Bina. So the Rebbe said, Shetzorik lichtnes a Chochmah. V'hainu al yidei yegiya v'shtadlus b'klei Chochmosei. In other words, the pink to say a kinyan is dafki with eise mechir. Ever you have to give for a kinyan in order to be koina a kinyan. B'derech klau it's b'kesev or kayetze b'zeh. And the Father said that in Ruchni is Ainian, that's that gear and the effort that you make with the Keli, to elevate the Keli more and more, that he should be able to be Makabu Ahoyer. Avo b'shloime nitten lo yachochma halyenim. Shloime got it, how do you call it, Fatika? He didn't have to buy it, but he got it. How come that? Because we see that Shloime had the opportunity to ask anything from the Avish. The Avish said to him, whatever you ask, I'll give you. And he said, that he wants Chochmah. And the Father Hashem nosen Chochmah l'Shleiman. Ibamir also Sachar, that he was prepared to overlook all Inyanim, B'chol Ha'ilam, and all the Inyanim of riches and the guns and the wheat, and he asked for Chochmah. So then the Eibishter gave him Chochmah Elyoinha, Shehoya Meya Etzloi Gilui Ribi Chochmah B'chol Dover. In any Inyam where he turned, there was Meya Aribui Chochmah, in anything that he turned to. Like we see the famous story over there, the two Weiber that they came in front of with the child. One time it was her child, and the other one time it was her child. And Shlomo Miller said to bring a guy with a sword and cut the child into two pieces and give one half and the other one half. All of a sudden one woman went mad, she went out of her mind, she started screaming and hollering and tumbling and the other was a bit taken aback, obviously she didn't say anything. So the one that screamed and tumbled, the Shlomo said, you have to give that to the child. It's her child. Because when he said to Schneider of Tvei, that she was the one that, shreid and tumbled, assumed that it's her child. The way she's from the man. Yeah, so the state ordered, that everybody saw that the divine wisdom is in the midst of Shlomo HaMelech.
If he can ask for anything you want, why did he ask for Mashiach?
Mashiach?
Yeah, why did you just ask for Atzmus? Why did he ask for Chachma?
Oh, Shlomo Melech had to show that he wanted it. Off a plate in his store. Normally you have to buy it. You understand? Normally you have to put in a machir. You have to put in that's the struggle and the effort to do it. Yeah, here, he had to give away all the other things and ask for.
Why did you ask for Atzmus?
Huh?
Why did you just ask for Atzmus?
Why didn't you ask for Atzmus? Chachma is a kli to Atzmus. Als je Chachma meet is, kriegt man Atzmus. Aber einige Name, Moshiach is only asking for Atzmus. It's written for Nochal of Ruach Sheva, Ruach Chachma Bina, the same thing of Moshiach. Ruach Eitz, Hira Hashem, and Chulu. It's the same basic Indian. Nochal, it'll come down on him. It'll be given to him Momaila. And the Pele was it that I ever said a famous sikh about that. That when we open the Aron Kodesh on Yom Tov, not on Shabbat, we say a whole piece and we quote that it should be Mekuyim Bono, Shenachal Ruach Chachma. So this is written about Mashiach. What does everybody say? Mekuyim Bono, it should be kept in us. Nachal Ruach. But it's not a possible which is name of Mashiach. So the Rebbe said a simon that's the in and everybody's got Mashiach in him, everybody's got a nitzuz for Mashiach. You have to open up the nitzuz and everybody's got to be a klein shekum Mashiach. And everybody's got to say that Mashiach. Way back in the time of the Hadikalims, the Chachamim HaKadumim, whoever was matakin that particular, might even have been the Anshe, the Chaysis who was exactly matakin that prayer. Be'ez Shlav. And Begili HaTorah was mistake. But anyway, does it the Indian that comes mil Maila, where it comes mil Maila, then it's Bli Kli. It's without a Indian from Kli. Avo B'Shloime Niten Loya Chachma. Ribu Chachma B'chol Dov Zo Shema Etzem. Shu al Shem Etzem Ho. Oh yeah. That's the Indian from Etzem Chacham. He's Chachmas al Gamre Mushotim and Shoinim Mikol Shari and Yonah Chachma. V'hine etzem ha'er imi yesel ha'mayla mina kli kanal shezol ha'mayla mima sha'kli tefeses oyer ya'askol shahim mitzad etzem oyer harehem b'chinas hafshota loy b'chinas islapshus. They're not entering into the levush of the kli or tfisa in the kli. Mikol mokeim hareze shoyre ba'kli u'mislavish bo. So we see that's always typical. The first one completely negates a certain Indian and then comes back and says, oh yes, but really it is. Yeah, it can really happen. So here we're going to see that if somebody gets to Zara Madrege in Chochmah, then he can reach a new shleimus, that he can actually bring that in some way to relate to the kli, and in some way the kli will also become ishachid with that etzem ha'oyer, albeit not in an even for mislabshus in the normal way, but it'll be shoyre u'mislavish. So I'll leave you to stew that one over and to sleep a little bit less deeply, because so some of these guys are doing the Adar say, well, I got no time. If I'm going to lose sleep tonight, it's because of the piece of meat in the salt and Tara and Yonim and all those different clothing over there in Hilchus Malicha, V'chuli, Dam Mishrach Shorich, and all the Yonim over there. Anyway, whatever, we'll leave you to think about it, that here we see that the Kli is Teifas, well, not Teifas, because the Alter Rebbe says that the Kli is only the oyer which is in this type of inyan is shoyra boy. Now if you look up in the Geras HaKodesh, near the end, the Alter Rebbe is masbir, was it the chilik between shoyra mislabish. Mislabish means that the inyan enters into the kli, mamish betfis it's a kli, and shoyra means that it's makif ala kli, but it has some sort of a ashpur betoich hakli, or it's not mamish nitfas in the kli, and that's what we call ashrua. And that's the Indian of I'll call Bayasura Shechinta Sharia, that the Shechina which we dwells on the 10. The Alter records that also at the end of Perik Yudalef in Tanya. Yesh lechalek ben zer lezer v'lisbeinen bezer v'och hapanim. This is the Indian. So we're going to see here that so great is the koyach of the kli that's able even to reach something which is not really shaykh to. And in Emerson, this is mitad etzem ha'oyer, and after it became, there's going to be a certain connection even with the kli, even in that. In other words, ultimately speaking, we want everything to come into a kli. We realize everything is in a oven, and the shlapshes, or tfisa, or shri, or hashrua, is you even in the kli. And that'll be a beer to the second question that we asked. If you can have oil chokmah, what does some keilim? Well, we already gave one answer to that. It has to be the winner from avodah and struggle and effort. Shouldn't be nahamed kaseifa. Also, we're going to see another beer will come out with there. And Be'ez Hashem in future and coming and developing episodes, and hopefully on Tuesday evening I've got to go and draw mine Shalom on Tuesday evening because I'm making matzahs on Wednesday morning, Be'ez Hashem. But I hope I should be finished with putting the water in over there and everything, and I should be able to come and give a class by about 8:15, 8:20, something like that. And then hopefully, as much as we can, and only b'derech efshar bilvad, I'm going to try and be mavayah was the Torah li'iyun. Because the reason I've avoided it ad koi is that it's a very profound inyan. It's not just inyan, and we'll see b'derech possibility what we can make of it, and then we'll just learn whatever we can v'hemshech inyan zeh. And everybody will say, how can we possibly leave and go away overseas and verbringen Kucherot when we don't even finish the Maimah yet?